Okay, how's it going out there, YouTube? So I've had several people ask me about the use of POR 15 on my projects. I use POR 15 quite extensively on most everything that I do. Some people don't like it, some people do. I'm a big fan. I believe in it. I've done many cars with it with great success and very little failure. And when I did have failure, it was my own fault for not taking the time to do it right. So, to answer people's questions who have asked me about it, I decided to do a small review and how-to video on applying POR 15 and getting good results, at least in my experience. So let's start off with, this is the piece I'm going to do today. It's kind of small, I know, but this is a headlight, part of a headlight assembly on a 69 Cougar XR7. You can see that it's pretty dirty and it needs to be redone. So a lot of guys will use spray paint on it, but again, I like POR 15. So there's three main components of POR 15. First of all, you got to get your part clean, right? So I sandblast everything in my cabinet, get it nice and clean. And then I'll use POR 15 metal prep. Metal prep, actually you're supposed to use, they say that you're supposed to use the POR 15 degreaser and cleaner, but really once you get the thing sandblasted, it's really not necessary to use the cleaner. If you wire wheel it, however, you may very well want to use the cleaner, or at least a good degreaser, to make sure that you get everything off of it. So, it's a good idea to go ahead and do that. I don't generally do it because, my sandblaster gets this nice and clean. I just wipe it down and then I go to the next step and I use metal prep. And what metal prep essentially is just an etching material that etches the metal and gives it something to hold on to while also cleaning it. And it really preps, as it says, the metal to accept the POR 15. So I highly recommend using this. I've used this stuff without using the metal prep and had pretty good results, but I always seem to have better results when I use the metal prep. I've got a car in my garage over there that was done 11 years ago or 10 years ago, and it still looks like the day I put it on. So that's the second step. Get your piece clean, and you can either use a degreaser or not. If you sandblast it, you don't really necessarily have to. It's recommended, but if you wire wheel it or clean it some other way, you definitely need to use a degreaser or the POR cleaner. And then you can go to the metal prep, and I'll show you how to use that shortly. And then after the metal prep, you're going to apply the POR 15 itself, and that's what this is right here. This is a gallon of POR 15 that I've had for about 9 months, and it's still as good as the day I bought it. So the key to long life of POR 15 is not allowing any air to get into it and then refrigerating it. The way I accomplish that is that I take self-tapping screws. In the smaller cans, you really don't, they make a can that's about that big. You don't really have to worry about it there. But in a quart can and a gallon can like this one, you want to make sure that no air gets to it. So the way I do that is, and I learned this by reading forums, and it works like a charm too, is that I take a self-tapping screw and put one on one side and one on the other side, and with a rubber seal on the bottom of it. And of course that's going to glue it right to the top, but that's what you want. And then when you get ready to use it, you can just take both screws out, pour out what you need. Make sure that you wipe the lid really, really well. I've never taken this piece here off. That's never been off the can. When I get ready to use it, I'll shake it a little bit, but that's about it. I'll just give it a little stir like that. And that's sufficient for it to pour out, and you get a good quality product. So that's how I do mine. And then when I do that, I also take this bag, plastic bag, just a Ziploc bag, and I'll put that over the top of the can and then stick it in my refrigerator down there. And that can, like I said, that can was opened 9 months ago, and it's still just as good as it was the day I got it. So the key is always to make sure that you keep the air out of the can. Once you open that, you can't let any air in it or it'll solidify and you won't get anything out of there and you'll waste your money. And this stuff is expensive, so you want to make sure at all times that you're keeping air out of the can and keeping it fresh. Keep it refrigerated if you can, and that product will last a good long time. So once we do the metal prep, let that completely dry. It's got to be bone dry. When you apply this stuff, it has to absolutely be bone dry. That piece of metal has to be as dry as it was the day it came out of the factory. That's one of the main keys of applying POR 15, is making sure that your piece is clean, prepped, and dry, bone dry. So after you apply the POR 15, and and I'll show you when we get to that part, it's finger tacky. Then you can go ahead and either apply a second coat of POR 15, which I do, because I find that I get great success by that. It's a little more expensive to do it that way, but do you want a good product, or do you want to chintz on everything and take a chance of not having a good result? I always apply 2 coats. I find that it, that I get a good result from it and it lasts forever. So after you apply your POR 15, the next thing you want to do, particularly if this is going to be in the sun, if it's going to be exposed at all to sunlight, is you want to apply some top coat. Now you can get top coat either in liquid form like that, which I've used and had great success with. In fact, I used top coat on this 67 Cougar XR7 project that I'm doing, and you can see the result there. That's all brushed on. It's all brushed on. That's 2 coats of POR 15 and 2 coats of top coat. And you can see that I got a real nice result with that. Now this car was blasted, media blasted. Actually it was hydro blasted. And then I applied 2 coats of POR 15 and 2 coats of top coat. This stuff right here. I applied it with a brush in a liquid form, but this is really good for small parts, that you can do with top coat, and you don't have to mess with the brush and all that stuff. It's the same product, just in an aerosol form, and it does a fantastic job. You can see how good that looks. That was done about 3 or 4 months ago. Well, let's see, it's March, so it was actually done back in probably October, September maybe. Everything you see there was done with POR 15. And that'll last forever. But anyway, getting back to our thing here. So yeah, once you do the metal prep, once you do the POR 15, if anything's going to be exposed to sunlight, and I do it in all cases, I don't even mess with it. I just go ahead and top coat everything I do. That way I never have to worry about it. Is it more expensive? Yeah. Is it absolutely necessary? Not really, unless it's going to be exposed to sunlight. Because if it's exposed to sunlight, this has no pigment in it, and it'll cause it to fade a little bit. So if it's going to be exposed to sunlight, take my advice, spend the money, get the top coat, apply it, and you'll never have to worry about it. It'll look beautiful all the time. Okay? So I'm going to now, and this is what I apply my POR 15 with, is this brush right here. You can get these at Home Depot, and they're about, I don't know, 60 cents a piece. And they do a really nice job of applying the product. Then you just throw them away. You don't have to worry about cleaning them, because you're not going to clean them. Just as simple as that. So this is, man, that's a dirty rag. I need to put that in the dirty rag pile. But this is how I apply it when I'm using the liquid form and when I use the metal prep. If I'm doing the whole car or if I'm doing big pieces, I'll put the metal prep in a spray bottle and spray it on there, and I'll show you that later. But that's a nice little handy way of applying it because it's all self-leveling. You brush it on there, it levels itself out and gives you a nice smooth finish. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this piece up, and when I'm done I will show you how I do the next step. That'll be the metal prep. So I'm going to put that in the sandblaster and blast it, and then I'll be back for step 2. Okay, thanks. Okay, so I went ahead and cleaned this part, put it in the blaster, and as you can see it's nice and spick and span and clean, ready for step 2. For years and years and years I used a wire wheel, and a couple of years ago I went and bought me a new sandblasting cabinet, and I'll tell you what, it's like a whole new world. So if you can afford one, go out and buy one, and your life will get a whole lot easier. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some metal prep. Now on bigger pieces you spray this stuff on, right? Put it in a spray bottle, squirt, 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 keep it moist for about 20 minutes, and then you're going to rinse it off after about 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, depending on how big a piece you're talking about. This thing here, I'll probably let it sit for, I don't know, about 20 minutes. And then we'll rinse it off. But the way I'm going to apply this today, because I don't really have that big a piece to do, and this is just for demonstration, so I'm going to pour a little bit of this in a cup. And then I'm going to apply it with my chip brush. So let's do that. All you really need to do is just kind of put it on there, and that's it. And then you let it sit. You don't want it to dry, because if it dries it leaves a film on there that you can't get off. So make sure that you apply it liberally and cover all the areas really good. You don't typically have to reapply it, but on a hot humid day you might have to, you know. Just depends. But this is how I do small pieces. A lot of guys will say, oh, you really should spray that on, but what's the difference, right? And this saves product by doing it this way, so there you go. Oops, missed a spot. So now that's all applied on there, and we'll let that sit there and soak for about the next 20 minutes. Every now and again I might have to come by and, you know, wet another little spot if it dries up on us, but it's about 50 degrees outside today and it's not humid at all, so I don't anticipate having to reapply anything. So we'll let that sit for about 20 minutes, and then I'll be back and we'll do the next step. There you go. Okay, so I went ahead and I used the metal prep, and I let it sit on there for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and I rinsed it all off. And as you can see, it did its magic. And we have the phosphorus coating that we wanted on there. It acts like kind of a self-etching primer, sort of, and then it flash rusts it. That's exactly what you want it to do. So now that's all prepped and ready to go for some POR 15. So I want to show you how I do this. I've got these self-tappers in there, and I'm going to take those out. Like I said, this can of POR is about 8 or 9 months old, and it's just as fresh as it was the day I opened it up the first time, which I never actually opened it up. I just tapped it. Take those screws out of there like that, and then what you're going to do is, I'm going to set the camera down when I do this, is pour your POR, and then you want to wipe the lid thoroughly. You don't want to have any product on that lid. So let me go ahead and pour what I need. You don't have to pour a whole lot of this stuff. I'll tell you, it goes a long way. So I'm just going to pour a little bit out of there. That should be more than sufficient. I'll pour a little bit more. And then what you want to do is clean it up with your brush real good on your lid. And then take your paper towel. You can see this. Take your paper towel and clean that off real good, because if you don't, it'll become like concrete. Just want to clean that off. Take your screws and put them back in there. You really only need to do it about finger tight. After you've done this a bunch of times with your can, it's going to get loose anyway, so you just want to get it down there tight and the POR will seal it. So now we're ready to POR, so I'm going to do that real quick because I'm running out of battery power here. When I do, this stuff goes a long way, man. You've seen how little I put in the jug, but you can see how easily that spreads. And you just kind of apply it. You can see how far it goes, and then it's going to level itself out. You won't have to go back and brush it or anything, you know. See that? That's kind of what it looks like. You definitely want to wear gloves. There's no question about that. If you don't wear gloves and you get this on you, you're going to spend like a month trying to get it back off. So, wear gloves. And that's about it. That's about all you do, is just kind of brush it on there like that. And make sure you get your underneath side. And you just kind of work your way around. And that's about it. That's your finished product. You know what I mean? And you can see how far that went. I actually should have did the other side first, because now I got to turn it over and do this side, right? And when I'm done, I'll prop it up a little bit. Put something underneath there and prop that up, because if I don't, it's going to be a problem. That's my phone going off. But I'm just going to go ahead and paint this underneath there real quick. Get this done. And then I'll prop it up and it'll sit here and dry. And then I'll be back when this is ready for the second coat. Okay? So that's all you do, is just brush it on there just like you're brushing anything else. It's really not that difficult. Again, wear gloves. If you don't, you'll be sorry. And you don't want it to be runny. And once that dries, it's going to kind of look like that. See how nice that is? Pretty good, isn't it? POR 15. It's some good stuff, man. You got about, depending on what the temperature is outside, you got a pretty good window of work time with this stuff. A lot of people say, well, you got to put it on immediately and be in a big hurry about it. Well, you don't really have to be. I've let it sit overnight and then come out the next day and used it. Like I said, it just kind of depends on the temperature and the humidity level outside, you know. So I'm going to set this on here and let that dry. And then once it's ready for the second coat, I'll come back and we'll put a second coat on it. Probably about, meantime, I'm going to put a towel on top of this and keep it moist. Put the brush down in there with it. So that's my phone going off, in case you're wondering. But so that's how I apply it. You can see already how it's self-leveling, and it's just real nice. You know, it gets a real nice finish, and it did a real nice job of adhering to that metal because we went through all the proper steps. So we'll let that dry, and I'll be back shortly, and I'll show you about how it has to be before you go for a second coat. It has to be kind of tacky, you know, but we'll take a look at that when the time comes. All right, see you then. Okay, guys, it's a little while later, and this piece is dried sufficiently to go ahead and top coat it. You can see right here that it's, well, that it's still a bit tacky, and that's exactly what you want, is for it to be just enough dry that when you drag your finger across it, it has a little bit of resistance on it, like it's not smooth, you know. And that's exactly how you want it to be when you top coat it. Now, POR 15 makes a top coat, and that's typically what I use to top coat things. Like, for example, that entire engine compartment right there was top coated with POR 15 top coat aerosol. I think I mentioned that earlier, right? But on these smaller pieces, because POR 15 is so expensive, I either use an SEM trim black, or I'll use a Rust-Oleum product, a satin black with Rust-Oleum. Because, you know, top coat is expensive, man. That can right there is probably close to 25 bucks, 20 to 25 bucks. So you want to kind of use that sparingly. It goes a long way, just like this does. Just like this does. And you can see this is a couple hours later, and this is still usable in here. I could still use that if I really wanted to. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and top coat this. And you can watch this as I do it. It ain't no big deal really. It's just like using spray paint. But I thought I'd do it while you guys were watching. So I'm just going to take my trim black and just kind of hit it. Again, you want that surface to be just a little bit tacky. Not real tacky, like it's wet, right? But just a little bit tacky to where it'll absorb the paint. See that? Looks pretty good, right? And I'm not using $20 a can paint to do it with. And then you just do it like you do any other piece, you know. You just go around it and give it some give it a nice light coat there. And we'll let that dry and hit it again probably later. And it'll be done. So that's basically the video, fellas and ladies, if any ladies are watching. That's my tutorial on POR 15. It's a great product. If you take your time and you do it correctly, you can have a nice piece like that from what we started with. And it'll last forever. And you won't have to worry about rust issues. Of course, if you're doing classic cars, are you really driving your car in the snow and salt anyway? But this is just protecting parts that are 40 and 50 years old and allow them to last forever. If you have any questions on this, I'm not a professional video guy, you know, so I'm just a do-it-yourselfer. And I found POR 15 about 12-15 years ago, and I've been using it pretty steadily, and I've had nothing but really good results with it for the money that you spend on it and for how long it lasts and how far it goes. Like that gallon of paint that I showed you earlier, it's done 2 cars. It did this Cougar and it did my Chrissy's Mustang too. That entire car underneath, the engine compartment and everything. Same thing on the Mustang. And I've still got some left, you know, so take your time with it. Get the piece clean. Use your metal prep. And then use your POR 15, like I showed you. And then top coat it with whatever you want to use for top coating. And you can have some nice pieces that'll last you a good long while. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I know I've repeated myself on several occasions. Once again, I will tell you that wear gloves. Absolutely wear gloves. POR 15 can be sprayed through a regular paint sprayer. It's an involved process that is too much for me because I'm not a paint man, so you know, this is what I do in my time. You can see that's already starting to dry there, and it's going to look really nice. So there you go. I hope this helped, and you can do it. I can do it, you can do it, anybody can do it. And as somebody who I watch on YouTube always says, if do it right, because if you ain't doing it right, you're not doing it at all, right? So that's it. POR 15. Good product, excellent wear, and excellent life. Thanks a lot. See you later.